Dr. Arjun Mehta, a respected Indian cardiologist in Los Angeles, and Priya Kapoor, a young ambitious nurse, shared a secret that began as passion but spiraled into obsession, ending in a deadly confrontation that shocked an entire city. Dr. Arjun Mehta appeared to have everything a person could ever desire. He was a successful cardiologist at one of Los Angeles's most prestigious hospitals, known for his precision, calm demeanor, and compassion toward patients. Colleagues admired his discipline and charm, while neighbors saw him as the perfect family man who never raised his voice and always greeted everyone with a polite smile. At home, his wife Neha adored him deeply. She had supported him from his early days as a struggling medical student in India, standing by him through sleepless nights and years of hard work that finally brought them to America. Together, they built a life of comfort, a spacious home in Pasadena, two bright children enrolled in private school, and weekends spent hosting dinner parties filled with laughter. Yet beneath this picture of perfection, Arjun felt an emptiness he couldn't explain. His achievements no longer gave him satisfaction. The predictable routine of his life, morning rounds, surgeries, and family dinners, started to feel like a cycle without meaning. He often stared at himself in the mirror before leaving for work, wondering how the man who had once dreamed of saving lives had turned into someone merely maintaining appearances. The quiet strain between him and Neha had also grown. She noticed his distracted silences, his long hours at the hospital, and the way he avoided emotional closeness. Still, to the outside world, the Metas were a model of success. No one could have guessed that beneath the calm surface, small fractures were beginning to form. Arjun's restlessness was not just a passing phase. It was the seed of something far more dangerous. What he sought next would not only destroy the image he had carefully built, but would change the lives of everyone connected to him forever. Priya Kapoor arrived at St. Mary's Medical Center with a sense of determination that impressed everyone who met her. She was in her late 20s, newly transferred from Chicago, with a record of excellent patient care and glowing recommendations. Her confidence was quiet but unshakable, and her presence seemed to brighten the sterile hospital corridors. She carried herself with poise, balancing kindness and professionalism in a way that quickly earned her respect among doctors and patients alike. For Dr. Arjun Mehta, she was a reminder of the passion he once had for medicine, a spark of energy in a workplace that had grown monotonous for him. Priya admired Dr. Mehta's reputation. She had heard stories of his skill and calm authority long before meeting him. When she was assigned to assist him during surgeries, she felt both nervous and honored. Their teamwork was effortless, and soon their professional chemistry became noticeable to others. Arjun found himself drawn to her curiosity, her ability to listen, and the warmth she brought to every interaction. What began as casual hallway conversations slowly turned into longer discussions in the staff lounge, moments that neither wanted to end. Outside of work, Priya's life was simple. She lived alone in a small apartment downtown, far from her family in India, and dedicated most of her time to her career. Yet beneath her ambition was loneliness, a quiet longing for connection. Arjun filled that void effortlessly, offering attention and admiration she had not felt in years. Their connection deepened quickly, blurring professional boundaries. Neither of them realized that what started as admiration and mutual respect was quietly transforming into an emotional bond strong enough to threaten everything they both had worked for. The connection between Arjun and Priya grew with an intensity neither had anticipated. Their days at the hospital became filled with subtle glances, small smiles, and moments of unspoken understanding. It started innocently, discussing patient charts over coffee, lingering in the break room after long shifts, walking to the parking lot together under the dim hospital lights. What they told themselves was friendship soon became something much more. Every stolen moment felt like a secret that belonged only to them. The thrill of hiding it made it even harder to resist. Arjun began rearranging his schedule to match hers. He volunteered for late shifts when she was assigned to the same ward, claiming it was for better supervision. Priya, too, found reasons to be around him, offering assistance on cases that didn't require her. The walls of professionalism slowly crumbled as their dependence on each other grew. Their conversations moved beyond medicine to life, dreams, and disappointments. Arjun confided about his marriage, about the emptiness that had crept into his perfect home. Priya listened, offering comfort and admiration that only deepened his attachment. Soon, meetings outside the hospital became unavoidable. A quiet cafe near downtown became their secret refuge, a place where they could talk freely without the constant buzz of hospital life. There, they allowed themselves to forget who they were supposed to be. What began as emotional comfort turned physical, binding them together with a passion that blinded them to the risks they were taking. Each encounter left them more entangled, more desperate to hold on to the illusion that they could live two separate lives. Neither realized that their secret was already beginning to cast shadows that would soon grow too dark to escape. Neha Mehta had always trusted her husband completely. For years, she had believed that their quiet distance was simply a result of his demanding profession. But as weeks turned into months, small inconsistencies began to disturb her peace. Arjun started coming home later than usual, offering vague explanations about emergency cases and unplanned surgeries. His phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, was now always in his pocket, locked and silent. When Neha called him at work, the calls often went unanswered. He claimed he was busy in procedures, yet something in his tone no longer felt convincing. The change was gradual but undeniable. He seemed distracted during family dinners, his eyes distant as if his mind was somewhere else entirely. Their conversations grew short, filled with politeness instead of warmth. Even their children noticed his absence, both physical and emotional. Neha tried to ignore her unease, convincing herself that stress might be taking its toll on him. But one evening, as she folded laundry, she found a faint trace of perfume on his shirt, a scent unfamiliar and far too distinct to be overlooked. Her heart sank, but she said nothing. Instead, she began quietly observing him. She noted the times he left for work, the excuses he made, and the unusual text notifications that flashed briefly on his screen before he turned it away. Each detail deepened her suspicion and broke her trust a little more. The certainty she once had in her marriage began to crumble, replaced by an ache she couldn't name. Neha didn't yet know the full truth, but she could feel it approaching like a storm. Something had changed forever, and deep down, she feared that her perfect life was built on a lie she was about to uncover. The illusion of secrecy began to unravel when a single moment of carelessness exposed what Arjun and Priya had worked so hard to hide. One afternoon, after a long surgery, they were seen leaving a quiet cafe near the hospital by one of Arjun's colleagues, Dr. Raymond Clark. It was a fleeting encounter, yet enough to spark curiosity. Arjun's reputation as a disciplined professional made the sight unusual. His easy smile, the way Priya walked close beside him, and the unmistakable comfort between them. Dr. Clark mentioned it casually to another coworker, and within days, whispers began circulating through the hospital corridors. At first, Arjun tried to dismiss the rumors as harmless gossip. But as he noticed subtle glances from his colleagues and a sudden change in how the staff interacted with him, panic began to set in. Priya, too, felt the pressure. Nurses who once admired her now spoke behind her back, and supervisors became unusually attentive to her conduct. The air around them turned heavy with judgment, and every shift together felt like walking on a thin line. Arjun's attempts to control the situation only made things worse. He started avoiding Priya at work, fearing further suspicion, but the distance made her anxious and resentful. She felt abandoned and exposed, unsure whether his silence was protection or rejection. The same connection that had once felt thrilling now became suffocating. Their private world was no longer secret, and every glance, every word carried the risk of discovery. What had started as passion was now turning into fear. The gossip had done its damage, and for the first time, both of them realized that their carefully built deception could no longer be contained within hospital walls. The tension between Arjun and Priya deepened as rumors continued to spread through the hospital. What once felt like an escape from reality now turned into a burden neither of them could carry easily. Priya's calm confidence began to fade, replaced by frustration and insecurity. She had given everything to this relationship, her time, her emotions, her reputation, and now she feared being left behind. Arjun, trapped between guilt and fear, grew distant. The pressure from work, the subtle scrutiny from peers, and the growing unease at home began to suffocate him. Priya started demanding clarity. She wanted a future, a promise that their relationship meant more than stolen moments and secrecy. But Arjun hesitated. He knew that any exposure could destroy his career and family. His silence, however, only fueled Priya's anger. The nurse who had once admired him began to see him as a man hiding behind excuses. The arguments between them grew more intense, laced with desperation and threats. She began to hint that if he didn't make a choice soon, she would. One evening, she sent him a message that shook him. She was tired of hiding and ready to tell the truth. Panic spread through Arjun's mind as he imagined everything collapsing: the scandal, the media, the loss of his license. He pleaded for time, but Priya had reached her breaking point. What had started as affection had turned into manipulation and fear. She wanted control, and he wanted escape. The dynamic between them shifted dangerously. No longer lovers bound by secrecy, they became adversaries tied together by guilt and obsession. Arjun's perfect world was collapsing, and with every demand Priya made, he felt himself inching closer to a decision he would soon regret forever. Neha's quiet suspicion had turned into certainty. Weeks of observing her husband's behavior had given her all the proof she needed, though she wished it weren't true. Late one night, after another unexplained absence, Arjun returned home to find her waiting in the living room. The silence in the house was heavier than ever. The calm mask Neha had worn for months was gone. In its place was a quiet resolve mixed with heartbreak. She confronted him with everything she knew: his late nights, the messages she had glimpsed, the perfume, and the rumors that had reached her through mutual acquaintances. Arjun could not deny it anymore. The truth hung between them like a blade. The confrontation was raw and unrestrained. Years of buried emotions poured out: her pain, his guilt, their resentment, and the deep fracture that had silently widened over time. Neha demanded answers he couldn't give. She asked why he had chosen to betray their family, what emptiness he had been trying to fill, and whether the woman he risked everything for truly meant that much to him. Arjun, overwhelmed by guilt and fear, struggled to respond. His excuses only deepened her anger. The night ended with shattered trust and silence. Neha withdrew into herself, no longer the supportive wife, but a woman betrayed and determined to protect her dignity. Arjun realized the magnitude of what he had done. The affair that once felt intoxicating now seemed poisonous. Everything he had built, his home, his reputation, his peace, was slipping away. The walls of his perfect life were closing in, and for the first time, he saw the full weight of his choices. What had begun as desire had now turned into a chain of consequences from which there was no easy escape. The weeks following the confrontation at home were filled with silence and distance. Arjun moved through his days in a haze, torn between guilt and fear. Neha no longer spoke to him except when necessary, and the tension in their home was unbearable. At work, whispers about his affair persisted, making every hallway feel hostile. Priya, feeling abandoned and humiliated, grew increasingly unstable. She had lost her composure, convinced that Arjun had used her and was now discarding her to salvage his marriage and career. Her texts turned desperate, alternating between pleading and threats. She demanded to meet him one last time, to talk, to explain, to decide what came next. Against his better judgment, Arjun agreed. That evening, they met at her apartment. The air was thick with resentment. What was meant to be a calm conversation quickly spiraled into confrontation. Priya accused him of ruining her life, of destroying her reputation, and leaving her with nothing but shame. Arjun tried to reason with her, urging her to let go, to move on, but his words only fueled her rage. The argument escalated as emotions boiled over. She threw a glass against the wall, shattering it into pieces, and screamed that if she couldn't have peace, neither would he. In the chaos, a struggle ensued. No one could say exactly what happened next, only that when it ended, the room was silent, and Priya lay lifeless on the floor. Arjun stood frozen, staring at the irreversible result of his choices. The affair that began as a secret escape had ended in blood and horror. The man once admired for saving lives had now taken one, and the life he had built was about to collapse beyond repair. The police arrived within hours after a neighbor reported loud noises and a crash coming from Priya's apartment. When officers entered, They found the scene grim and chaotic, broken glass scattered across the floor, signs of struggle, and Priya's lifeless body near the coffee table. Arjun was still there, sitting in shock, his hands trembling and stained with blood. He didn't attempt to flee or hide what had happened. He simply whispered that it had been an accident. The officers quickly detained him, but the story was far from clear. As investigators pieced together the events of that night, the affair between Arjun and Priya came to light. Text messages recovered from both their phones revealed months of secret communication, passion, and recent tension. The evidence painted a picture of obsession and emotional collapse. The hospital staff were questioned, colleagues gave statements, and soon the private scandal became a public spectacle. Local news stations seized the story, describing the shocking downfall of a respected doctor whose double life had ended in tragedy. Neha learned about the murder from the police, not her husband. The news shattered her completely. She had imagined betrayal, but not death. While the media portrayed her as the heartbroken wife, she felt only numb disbelief. Forensic reports later confirmed that Priya had suffered blunt force trauma during the altercation. Whether it was an accident or a moment of uncontrolled rage became the central question of the trial. Arjun's arrest sent ripples through the community. Patients who once trusted him withdrew their admiration, and the hospital suspended him indefinitely. His once proud name now appeared in headlines alongside words like murder, betrayal, and scandal. The perfect doctor had become the center of a tragedy no one could have imagined. The trial of Dr. Arjun Meta became one of the most followed court cases in Los Angeles that year. Each day, journalists crowded outside the courthouse, capturing every moment of his fall from grace. The prosecution painted him as a man who let his arrogance and guilt consume him, leading to a fatal act of rage. The defense, on the other hand, argued that the death had been accidental, a tragic outcome of an emotional breakdown between two people trapped in a web of secrecy and despair. Witnesses testified, evidence was displayed, and the once-admired doctor sat in silence as his private sins were laid bare before the world. Neha attended the trial only once. Seeing her husband behind the glass, broken and hollow, was more than she could bear. She withdrew from public life, choosing instead to focus on protecting her children from the endless media attention. Her name became a symbol of silent suffering, while Arjun's became synonymous with scandal and moral downfall. When the verdict was finally read, Arjun was found guilty of manslaughter. The judge described his actions as reckless and selfish, driven by pride and emotional weakness. He was sentenced to years in prison, where he would have endless time to reflect on the choices that destroyed everything he held dear. The story faded from the headlines over time, replaced by newer scandals. But for those who knew him, the memory lingered, a chilling reminder of how quickly desire can turn into destruction. Arjun's story became a cautionary tale whispered among colleagues and students. No matter how successful or respected one may be, a single hidden lie can unravel an entire life in the most devastating way imaginable.